So I could say, I am just this umbilical cord. And it's independently alive, and it's going to die. I'm going to die. I'm just this cord. I'm going to die. And I have all this worry and anxiety about how am I going to be fed and how am I going to survive. And that's one possible way to live. So life is eternal. I don't have to identify as just a particular chunk of flesh, right? Life is eternal. The connection of the cord was never an isolated life. The cord itself was never an isolated life or organism. There is no isolated organism. There isn't one. There are distinct organisms, like there are distinct branches of a tree. But they're not isolated. There's no branch without a trunk and roots to have originated that. There's no life form without eternal life. How do we know that God exists? Because we exist. We may say we're not God, but that's just something we say until we stop saying that and say something else, or say nothing at all. So, life is eternal. The connection of the cord was never an isolated life. The connection of the cord never really lives and never really dies. The body never really lives and never really dies. A tree never really lives and never really dies, except as a tree. But a tree is a label in language. Life is fundamental. The tree is a branch of life. Do you get the way the language is being used here? So the umbilical cord never really lives. The umbilical cord never really dies. It's like saying the fingernail lives, or the follicle of hair lives, or that tree lives, or that forest lives, or that planet lives, or that cell lives, or that country, exists for however long and then no longer exists, or that business exists for however long and then it no longer exists. Language can be formed by life saying something like, I'm just an isolated umbilical cord. Eventually, I will die. Now I must struggle anxiously to survive. I must desperately earn my way into heaven before it's too late. That's the kind of thing that life can say through language. I'm just this isolated umbilical cord. That's the form that I say I am limited to. I'm just this fingernail. I'm just this hair. And if you cut that hair, oh boy, it's going to be cut. This is just a distinct pattern in language. Life is inherently eternal. Eternal doesn't just mean outside of the normal cycles of birth and death and time, but eternal also could mean endless. Like there's no boundary there's no border between one life and the rest of life. There's no inherent border. If you have two forests that we label in language as two distinct forests, can they overlap? Sure. It's like the physical space of one tree's branches can overlap into, extend into the branches of another tree. It's no big deal. I talk about the front of my hand and the back of my hand. What's the boundary between the two? There isn't one. They're just labels in language. Now, are there distinct things called boundaries? Yeah. Where are they? In language. Where else are they? Well, they're wherever else they are, if at all. But the point is, there is a life that is beyond a single isolated life. So life is inherently eternal. Each piece of fruit, or each bodily form, is inherently mortal. We could call an umbilical cord mortal. We just don't do that, but we will call a hair follicle alive and then call it dead. We'll call a forest, we could call a forest alive and then call it dead. There's no real specific boundary in language that is what is an organism and what is a group of organisms. We can talk about a school of fish. We can talk about a tribe of humans. That tribe merges with another tribe. That tribe dies. That tribe, expands. It grows. Gets stronger. Gets weaker. So do you claim to be an isolated umbilical cord or only an isolated branch that has no relationship to any sea or trunk? God's will isn't happening here. This is my will. I'm isolated from all of the rest of life. It's my life, not yours. Not yours, not God's. It's mine. This is my branch. There's no tree under me. I'm just this one isolated umbilical cord. I have nothing to do with those people. Do you claim to be an isolated form? Do you claim to be a body isolated from life? Or do you claim to be one isolated life within a particular body? Like, I'm not the body, I'm just the life within the body. Or could you be the eternal life which forms all bodies, all branches, all forms, and which lives within them and through them? In the absence of the activity of language, is eternal life present already? Or is there some isolated identity beyond language which is figuring out how to eventually become alive, how to attain eternal life, how to get in to heaven, insisting that because of some great tragedy or shame or injustice or sin in the past which needs to be corrected first, one cannot already be here? What have you been claiming that you need to do first as a priority before experiencing the heavenly kingdom of eternal life now? What else? Are you done yet? Are you ready? Are you open to eternal life? Are you open to already being reborn as not just a mortal, but as life itself? So how does life stop saying, I'm only a particular mortal form? Say nothing at all. Say anything else. If you recognize that the words are just words, then even saying, I'm only a particular mortal form, has no particular importance. Similar to saying, I'm an isolated lizard in that tree over there. Or, I was once a small baby in a past life, but that baby has died, and now I am a big 6-year-old boy, and soon the 6-year-old will die, and a 7-year-old will begin, replacing the dead 6-year-old. Are you language? Are you a label? Are you language, or are you that which forms language? Forms categories, forms isolated branches out of a single tree. Who says that those branches are separate? Is it you? Is it me? Or are the branches inherently separate? Or do we just say, oh, I'm not that branch, I'm not that life, I'm this life over here?